It has been a hot minute. It has been a hot minute. I have been busy. I crashed my quad again. This is a Polar Vista. And this is why I think this is possibly one of the most groundbreaking things to happen in digital FPV since ever. What's up, everybody? This is me, always crashing FPV, and this is another story of my journey into FPV. So today I'm talking about the Polar Vista, which I recently got my hands on, and I've been flying it quite frequently over the past week or so. And I'm going to give to you what I think are the pros and cons of this camera and how it might suit you as your next choice of camera for your quad. Anyway, a little backstory. Okay, so I ordered the Polar Vista when they were first in stock because I really couldn't get any other digital video transmitter out there. There was no DJI Air unit, there was no Caddx Vista, there was no Nebula Pro, and I did not want to buy the Nebula Nano. Okay, thank you, global chip shortage. So I didn't have an option how long the cable length was. So when I first ordered it, it came with an 8cm cable, and it was too short to fit into the 5-inch quads. I had to fit it into my 4-inch. I managed to scrounge enough parts together to put together the 4-inch again. This is the one that I killed many times already. I killed it again. Another story for another time. I crashed it into a tree. It was damn funny. So I put this quad together just in time too, because Vinny invited me to a super secret night spot, which is not really super secret anymore, and you couldn't bring any 5-inch quads because 5-inch quads were too noisy. So I just had a 4-inch and it was just perfect. It was like just zipping around at night, and we get to the spot. And this is the first good thing about the Polar Vista. Is that I put on the goggles and it is brighter in the goggles than it is in real life. And to me, I'll show you the picture of what real life looks like and then what the goggles look like. And it's amazing, mind-blowing. You could see in the dark. And this is great because basically it's like you can see the trees, you can see obstacles. Before I get to what I think is really amazing about the Polar Vista is that I would like to clear some concerns that some pilots might have. The number one thing I think most people ask about, or most people mention, is the latency. Now, we all know that Joshua Bardwell was talking about his unit being almost unflyable, and maybe he had a bad unit, but as a beginner pilot as myself, I can't tell. It's like the differences between running like 25 milliseconds and 30 milliseconds and 60 FPS and 120 FPS. Now, I have a Nebula Pro and I fly that as well, and I really just can't tell the difference. I'm completely fine with 60 FPS. So to me, the latency issue doesn't really affect me. Okay, I'm not a racer. I'm just trying to cruise around, trying to avoid trees, and I can't tell. So to me, it's okay. But if that really matters to you, then maybe you should avoid this camera. The second thing about the camera is that you cannot change the settings unless you have an external board. You know, one of those things you have to solder in and then change the settings. Well, what I find is that the default settings on this camera is actually pretty good. It's actually pretty good. The colors are good. It's not oversaturated like what I see in the Nebula Nanos, and HDR, or the dynamic range of it, is actually okay. I mean, you can see the light in the dark, especially when you're exiting like a dark area. You can see what you're flying into, and I think it looks fine to me. I don't need to change the settings, then it's okay. Right? So that's the second issue. I think the only con that I have an issue with, which is the third point I want to talk about, is the aspect ratio. Now, 16:9 is a normal aspect ratio that most of us experience in our day-to-day. Like, for example, if you're watching this YouTube, for example, it's 16:9. You're watching your phone, most likely a movie or something is 16:9. However, when you're flying FPV, the 4:3 ratio actually helps you because you get to see the ground. You get to see more vertical space, right? I find myself when I fly the camera, I'm looking up. I'm looking up a lot because I'm trying to find the ground, and I just don't do that as much with the 4:3 aspect ratio because I can actually see where the height is. I think this is something that you should be aware of, because when you're doing power loops and stuff, you're constantly trying to find the ground, trying to look up, and you don't want to crash into the ground. And especially when I'm landing, I'm trying to find the ground, trying to land. You can't see it, right? To me, I can't see it. It just gets chopped off like that, chopped off from the top and the bottom. So 16:9 aspect ratio is an issue. So I think this camera is actually better suited for cruising, because you get to have that wide field of view and you're just like cruising and you don't really need to do freestyle maneuvers, etc. So to summarize, right? So the cons of the camera is the no low latency mode. right? If you're a beginner, maybe you can't tell, like me. Second of all, you can't switch the camera settings out of the box. You need to solder up something else. And it's a non-issue for me because the camera looks okay. The only issue is number 3, which is the 16:9 aspect ratio. I kind of wish you could change it to 4:3 just to see the difference, but you can't. So, okay. But I guess that's not what a camera is made for, which leads me to the pros of it, right? The pros is that you have night vision. You can see in the dark, okay? And the 16:9 aspect ratio maybe is better suited for small, long-range cruisers that you can just go very far and just enjoy flying. And this is, to me, like one of the bigger positives of this camera, is because if you're like me, if you're busy, you're working, you can't find the time to go and fly. The parks are busy with people, and you just can't find time in the day to go fly. Maybe flying in times where there's low light, maybe that could be for you, like flying in dark areas or even hidden parking spots. That could be a cool thing. Yeah, I think this is what this camera is made for. This camera is made for busy ass people. Busy ass people who can't find time in the day to fly. Especially, it's like you go on the weekends, it's like that's the only time you have. The weekends, if you go to the parks are filled with people. Where are you gonna fly? Like, people just walk out onto the field, and that could be really dangerous. And you don't want to be the guy that the government like clamps down FPV flying because you flew into somebody. So anyway, I think, but the other thing is that despite of that, so the night vision, the clarity in daylight also is pretty good. Besides that, if you were to go look for a camera to buy today, you don't have many options. Everything's sold out. I don't know where you're gonna find, like, if you don't want the nano, right? Equally shitty. I think this is the only option that you have. So this is the second biggest pro that you have about this camera, is that it's available. You can buy one right now. You don't have to wait for a restock that you never know if it's gonna come or not gonna come. There's another camera you can buy, which is the Runcam MIPI, which is also 16:9 and also doesn't have like low latency mode. So it's either you don't have a camera, or you have a camera that's okay, pretty good. I know people are going to dispute me and say like, oh yeah, go fly analog, right? No, we're not talking about analog here. I know analog is like, you can already see at night in analog, and you already have like no latency issue, which is great. But I just so happen to start on digital. You can come at me in the comments, or but I was like, yeah, sucks to be me. This is the best we have, right? I like it. I like the camera. The only gripe is that I wish the cable was longer. I can fit it into a larger drone, and then we can do a larger long range quad, you know, maybe something like this. Anyway, I'm gonna harvest the buzzer from this fellow, man. God damn. I got this drink. This is the only alcohol that I have left. I'm on this kind of sobriety thing where I'm not purchasing alcohol. Somebody send me something, please. This is disgusting. I bought this from Iceland. I'm like drinking everything that I could find in my house. See, this guy. Ooh, almost crashed. Almost always crash. Always crash. FPV.